All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Power Hour, where the hour shall pass and the power continues. Today is another great day. We are excited to have two fantastic guests that you'll learn a lot from over the next couple of minutes. A few housekeeping before we get into it. Please keep your microphones on mute. This session is being recorded and so we'll be making it available subsequently on YouTube. Please use the chat to let us know where you're coming in from. Feel free to share more about your business there as well. And we'll be dropping a poll at sometime during the conversation. Would love for you to share your opinion or your feedback with us. If you know someone that should be here and is not here yet, just tap them on their phone or send them a message, whatever you do. Let them know we're getting started. The Global Opportunities Committee is a committee of the Atlanta Black Chambers, and for those of you who are joining for the first time, welcome. We have been doing a lot with the Global Opportunities Committee for the Chamber, really helping to make the Chamber worldwide. The Atlanta Black Chamber is based in Atlanta, Georgia. You don't need to be in Atlanta to be a part of the Chamber, and so you can become an international member of the Chamber. So feel free to pay attention to the chat or communications lead Samuel will be sharing on how you can be a member there as well. And we're also excited about the Go Global Conference, which is one of our key programming that we produce, and we're producing it annually. So if you have not yet signed up for the Go Global Conference, where we bring the world into Atlanta to connect and do business, it's something that we certainly recommend you to do and do it now. So you can also learn about that in the chat as well. So we're gonna and last week we did not have Power Hour because we were on a pretty much an organization-wide break, if I may say that. And so I hope everybody had enjoyed their Independence holiday weekend. It was a long weekend, and we're back. And this month we're going to be focusing a lot on a number of other subjects that we want you to take away and grow from. Um, so let's get started. I have two wonderful guests here, Dr. Jackie Modest and Mr. Soni or David, if I'm getting that right.
That's
Welcome to
correct.
the Power
Yeah.
Hour, guys. Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you so much for joining. Why don't we get started by introducing yourself and introducing your business? And yeah, maybe we'll start with you, Dr. Jackie.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm really glad to be here. I am usually behind the scenes at ABC because I work the chat for Tuesday Talks. So some of you may recognize my name or face. I'm glad to be a guest here today to talk about my company. So I am Jackie Modest. I'm a career educator. I've been a higher ed faculty member for 30 years, and I've also worked as a senior administrator in university and as an alumni board member at Columbia University, my alma mater. And Columbia has been in the news so much lately that we've gotten a lot of bad press, but there's a lot of change coming, and I am glad to be part of that. My business is Global Ed Immersion. We provide personalized support for international and first generation university students. We build community mutuality and trust amongst the world's learners through our programming and the related work that we do. We have a lot of programs that connect and build bridges between the world at large and the United States through education.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm sure when we say Colombia, which is very interesting because I'm currently in Colombia, but we're talking about Colombia
Columbia
with a
University.
U
Mhm.
and not Colombia with a O. That always gets some folks. So you're talking about Columbia University. to be clear. Thank you, Doc. Sonny, tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sonny David. I am an athletic footwear designer by trade. Um, what does this mean? It's quite strange, isn't it? I mean, shoes, we wear sneakers every day, but behind the scenes, where does it start? And it starts with me. So I've got 35 years experience in designing, developing, and finally manufacturing of athletic footwear. And I'm currently based in Vietnam. I run a small company which basically bridges the gap between small and medium-sized brands who actually want to come into Southeast Asia for manufacturing, but do not have the resources or the offices or the connections or contacts. And I am that bridge. So they come to me and I set up a system for them and get them into manufacturing in Vietnam predominantly. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Awesome. We're going to touch on that. That's incredible. I've never actually met a footwear designer before, but I've worn a lot of shoes. I know that. So I'm really excited to talk to you. Dr. Jackie, let me just go to you real quick and I want to ask why Southeast Asia, because first of all, let's place Southeast Asia for everyone so that we understand Vietnam, for example, and then Southeast Asia at large. But you mentioned something earlier that you are, and most people didn't know this, you're part of the ABC family. You have been a part of the ABC family for a while, and you are in the background, but you have such an amazing resume, and you've been doing so much internationally. And most people had no idea. And so we're super excited to sort of bring that news, if you may, to folks. But talk to me a little bit about Southeast Asia. Help us to place that and Vietnam and why did you decide, as someone always say, there's so many countries in the world, but why did you make that decision to do Vietnam?
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So glad to be here. Um, so the story is a long, winding story. I've always been involved with international students, and my PhD is in American Studies, but I use American Studies to look at the United States critically from a global perspective. So diplomacy, international relations, foreign policy, and particularly through music. So cultural diplomacy has been so important in all of my professional life. And so in the classroom, I teach American studies, I teach Latin American and Caribbean history, teach Latin American Caribbean literature, African American history and literature is also something I teach. And then I teach diasporic literature. So literature's originating on the continent, but have landed here in the United States. So all of that has filled my classes over the past 30 years with lots of international students who desire to know more about themselves through the literature, the history, and the culture, and music in particular, of the world and how the United States fits into that. When I was on the alumni board at Columbia, I've served 6 years on the alumni board at Columbia University. We chartered our clubs in Beijing and Shanghai. They are now the largest and most well-attended alumni clubs in China. So they're huge, huge clubs. And we have now expanded. So Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Chongqing, Guangzhou, there's all these clubs now, Hong Kong, of course. And so that was my first formal entry into Asia, was through China. And we have about 300,000 active alumni. I was co-chair of the Alumni Relations Committee and the Education Committee when I served on the board. And so when I finally went to China, I had a ready-made network. So I knew everybody and everybody knew me. And it was just an amazing experience. Fast forward, when my youngest son graduated, I decided I'd flip the script. Educators talk about flipping the classroom. I said, well, I'm going to flip our household. The boys were in school, young men were in school at Columbia and NYU. And I said, well, you guys can, watch the apartment and house sit. I'll go to China and you can come visit me. And so that we've always traveled a lot. So that was totally normal for our household. And so that's what we did. And Emilio, my youngest one, is a musician. He came to perform in Beijing and Shanghai. And so we sold out performances every night he was there. So Asia has just been a very important part of the work I've done. And I've worked in China actually for several years. Vietnam, because it is a rising economy, it is a BRICS member nation, but Vietnam, as an educator, Vietnam also sends the sixth highest number of students to the US each year. So that represents, more than 22,000 Vietnamese students come to the United States for tertiary education a year. I wanted to know as an educator how students were being prepared for my university classrooms. And so I kind of took a quasi-retirement from higher ed to come and investigate more closely what was happening in secondary schools. And what I found was there was a great need for educational collaboration to prepare students for university classrooms in the US.
Oh, that's fantastic, and you've obviously made a business out of this, and then we'll talk a little bit about that. But Sonny, I wanna ask you a similar question around sort of why you've chosen Vietnam, but also for those of us who have never been there before, paint the picture for us. What is it like? You're obviously a black business owner, and when I hear Vietnam, I'm not thinking that. So help us to understand, if you may paint the picture. Are there more of us there? What is it like living there and doing business? You're not even just visiting, like you
Right,
live there.
right.
And I imagine you also speak the language too, and that's very interesting to know. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'll start with talking about the Vietnamese people. People here, I've worked in lots of countries, 10 countries in total. And my Asian career started in South Korea. I left university, joined Converse as a young designer. And after 6 months, my boss said to me, "Hey, Sonny, you're a very good designer, but you don't know how to make shoes." So I was shipped out to South Korea to a place called Busan, and I spent 6 months understanding how athletic shoes are actually made, and went from stage to stage, from setting up the last, choosing materials, checking the production, stitching, and all of that. So my career started there, moving within brands, and I'll just fast forward back to why Vietnam. And so the history is athletic shoes were made in Tokyo or in Japan a long time ago. Prices crept up, so it moved to South Korea. Prices went up again after a couple of years, industrialization, the shift from soft goods to exactly what's happening in Taiwan at the moment. So the shift from soft goods into blue chip industries, and that meant that there was no priority anymore for shoes or clothing. And that moved to Taiwan. And then from Taiwan, it moved to China. And China became the hub of the supply chain. So footwear, clothing, textiles, you name it. And now, in the last 20 years, tariffs, lots of other forces, lots of other mitigating factors, China now decided to spread out. So all of the industries that you're seeing, and I'll go country by country. So Indonesia, so talking about Southeast Asia. So it moved from China. So Chinese investors, so you had three sets of investors, Chinese, Taiwanese, and Korean, chose to move southeast. So some of them went to Indonesia, some of them to Laos, some to Vietnam, and some to Thailand. So what happened then was that the small industries in soft goods started building up in all of these countries. And so looking at tariffs, especially today, Vietnam signed an agreement 3-4 years ago with Europe, which means that all goods out of Vietnam going to the EU is zero duty. So that was a massive determining factor, because then I've worked in China. I worked in China for 6 years. And looking at the wages, the way the wages have started, because China started consuming as well. So they're not just manufacturing. So you've gone from a stitch in hand earning $200 a month to $800 a month. And that obviously, again, the Chinese were thinking, well, what can we do now? Because then prices just keep going up. So looking at Southeast Asia, where wages are less, working conditions are better. So looking at Vietnam, where I live, I've lived here for about 5 years. And I can tell you, in terms of being a Black person, Vietnamese don't care. It's very different when you're Black and you're walking on the streets of China. It really doesn't matter where you are. People stare at you. In Vietnam, nobody stares at you. Nobody cares. As long as you're law-abiding, you're a good citizen. You get what you want. You go to any office. Setting up a company is easy, irrespective, of where you come from, as long as you have the resources to do so. So yeah, I chose Vietnam because of the friendliness, the first thing, obviously the weather. So my background obviously says it all. Um, and it's a good place to do business.
That's fantastic. And I want to give a big shout out to Samuel, who's our communications lead, because I think Samuel was the one who connected us, and told us that you were actually in Vietnam. So this is a question for both of you. What do you make of the current environment around doing business in Asia? You've seen the tabloids and the news around the tariffs, and you've seen the news around immigration. What's your perspective? How do you react to these things as business owners in the current environment?
So Soni, I want to pick up on what Soni had said to kind of answer that. Soni describes so clearly the evolution of business, right? So the evolution of uh, building economies. So what he's describing is the history of moving from a factory or industrial economy to a knowledge economy. There's a long time, there are shades of gray all along the process. But as uh, the businesses have been looking for cheaper labor and materials, they've moved south. And so that's how Southeast Asia is now really developing so quickly. And they're a very industrialized economy, but moving towards a knowledge economy. But we've got some time to go. So that's why education plays a part of it. So businesses in this environment, I think one of the big things people are looking for in Vietnam is mutuality. So it is wonderful to have people from outside, let's say from the US or from other countries, come in and invest and participate. But people in Vietnam would also like access to those markets outside of the country, so they can expand their own businesses and form collaborations that are mutually beneficial. So I think there's too much one way. And despite the tariffs and in spite of them, I think they are actually, in a very important way, designed to focus on the needs that are there and the opportunity. And how can we bridge these gaps to create opportunities for all the people who want to be involved in business opportunities in Vietnam in this case.
Awesome. Sonny, did you want to respond?
Yes. I think it's very structured here. I'll put it that way. One would not, in terms of infrastructure, and I think the support that we get as foreigners from the Vietnamese government, it's one would think, one would expect that, a typical banana republic, but that's not the case here. And also, being a communist or socialist country, one would also think that, yes, there are lots of red tapes, but then there are certain strict rules. So let's look at the workforce in terms of labor contracts. here, our workers, so we've got, factories with 1,200 people. We've got factories with 3,000 people. We've got factories with 20,000 people. And all of these workers or the owners have to abide by the laws, labor laws, which are very strict. So which means that you can't underpay. There are no underage workers, for example. That's not allowed. So the minimum age for a factory hand is 16, and that's controlled. So that means that under 18s are not allowed to work longer than 6 hours a day, and that's massively enforced. So that the country functions based on investments, like Dr. Jack said, investments from outside. So I employ 25 Vietnamese, for example. And so providing health cover, which is very, very necessary here. So you're forced to actually provide it. But being from Europe, you know that that's an essential. And then you've got your pension schemes. You've got what you don't get in China, you get holidays. So my staff don't work Saturdays. They don't work Sundays. So it's Mondays through Fridays, unless, of course, there's an emergency. So in summary of it all, I think that yes, it is still lopsided, but then the thing is, Vietnam is growing in terms of locals investing. So 30 years ago, you'd never have seen a Vietnamese owning a factory. But today, there are lots of Vietnamese who own factories, whose um, quality of life have improved tremendously. And if, referring back again, to Dr. Modeste, 22,000 students going to the US to study, it means that the parents have made some money. How have they made the money? It's 99% from manufacturing. So there is. So these kids will go out and return with that expertise. It really, some of them may not join the parents' industries. I have examples like that where the kids, went to school in Canada, returned, and didn't want to work in the factories. But then they bring in other things back into the country, which is the beautiful thing. A lot of Vietnamese return with the knowledge that they've acquired outside. So it is paying off slowly. It's not as lopsided as it was many years ago. So it is changing.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And there's obviously a pattern there where we see the US education system being one of the best in the world or the best in the world. And we see a lot of people being attracted to that, and they will come for that knowledge, and then they'll go back to their jurisdiction and impart that, and then you see that sort of cycle of development. The Global Opportunities Committee, we focus on opportunities around the world for our members. The global Black business community there is need to integrate and include us more into the economies of the world. So I'm super proud and excited that you are a part of these economies. We look at three things when we identify opportunities for our community: trade, whether you're in professional service or you're doing a tangible product. And I'm really grateful that I have both of you, because one of you are in service and one of you are in products, and that's a great balance. But we also look at investment opportunities that may exist as well as partnership. It's a little harder for a lot of us to do the investment side of it, because a lot of the investment requirement sometimes goes as far as institutional capital, as we say. But in terms of partnership, it seems to be a lot more easier, perhaps, in forming partnerships on the ground and being able to actually do business. And then in terms of the trade, being able to then trade accordingly between jurisdiction. I want to ask both of you, because our members here, for the most part, are in the professional services business. And as they introduce themselves in the chat and talk about what sort of business that they're in, and we always love to know what kind of business that you're in, and just to really then understand and validate that most of you are in professional services. And Southeast Vietnam, it's an industrialized kind of economy, as you mentioned, Dr. Jackie, and it's slowly moving towards the knowledge economy. What can you say to people who are on the call today, who are in professional services business, and they're looking for an opportunity? to do business there? What are the opportunities? Where should they be thinking? What should they be thinking? I think your business is clever, being able to take students from Vietnam, bring them and expose them to the U.S. System. I mean, I love it. But what else is out there in terms of opportunities for us to leverage, particularly in the professional service space?
That's a great question. So I am a member of APEC, which is the Asia Pacific Economic Consortium of countries, and there are maybe 21 countries involved in this. So, I move around. I've been in the region for a long time, and I move around very freely because of my APEC membership. Um, One of the things that I work on very carefully, because I work as my primary work is as an education consultant. So the branches that I do, so the tertiary tours that my company has, that's one branch of it. But the chunk of it is always educational consulting. One big thing that we need is human resource development. As countries move from industrial economies to knowledge economies, the policies that pertain to human resource development also need to evolve. So it's a different type of contract, let's say, that shapes the labor and relationship for employees when they work in factories as compared to when they work in knowledge economies and knowledge sectors. They're not creating products, but creating knowledge, right? So we need human resource development and policy writing to support business processes, technological development, innovation, and to promote collaboration between the entities, right? An alignment of processes, coordination of systems that support economic growth and national development and make a social impact. So we need attorneys, we need service providers, we need people who can interpret contracts. We need people to collaborate with Vietnamese who are bilingual with English so that they can help shape those contracts on the other side. You need people who are bilingual on the US side, for example, or outside Vietnam. You don't even have to speak Vietnamese. If you speak another language, any other language, you have a proclivity for working in multiple language environments. So you need people who are culturally competent and sensitive to the language differences and the ability to listen with culturally attuned ears, if you will, so that the work and the collaboration can be meaningful. But a lot of human resource development, workforce development, collaboration, and policy writing in particular that will, in a sense, track the evolution of the economy from industry to the knowledge economy. So we need people in all those areas.
Yeah, and Sonny, if you can add to that, I wanted to ask, so what about the access? So now that we're aware of some of these opportunities, I want to also talk about access because that's also, if you may, it's a barrier. We hear about these different things that are available, but how do we actually access them? And who within our community is saying, you know what, let me get to Sonny, or let me get to Dr. Jack, and let me give her this opportunity. And that's what we're trying to do with GOC. But how do you actually access this kind of thing in the Southeast Asia? And if I could just also add to that piece of access, we're also really looking at, we realize a partnership, and I want to go back to that, and I'm going to come to both of you around partnership, how easy it is to then get a partner, how open are Vietnamese or Southeast Asians, how open are they to partnership, especially within the Black business community? Sonny?
Okay, so I mean, I'll cite myself as an example. And coming here 5 years ago, not really knowing anyone, and through the footwear industry, obviously, and then the old colleagues, oh, hey, I'm in Vietnam, can you drop by and see? So yes, there are specialists for creating partnerships. So they have offices, there are lawyers, there are advisors, there are chambers that you could speak to, book appointments, go in and have a chat as to what you want to do. So in my particular case, I had to meet one of the lawyers in one of those companies who provide partnerships, provide advice as to how to set up a business in Vietnam. So there are two possibilities. If you were going to pick a partner, which I did in terms of manufacturing, because obviously setting up a factory will set you back $2-3 million. And so you go in with a portfolio and you have a chat, you book an appointment, you go in, you see the factory, you talk to them, and you eventually, it's quite, I must say I've had a strike rate of almost 100%. So I cooperate with about 6 factories, because in footwear, you've got specialists. So there are factories that can only do running shoes and tennis shoes, and they can't do hiking boots because it's a completely different construction. And you've got other factories that will do rubber boots, for example, or safety footwear, or kids' shoes, or ladies' slippers, sandals. So one factory can't do all of this 250 plus categories of footwear that we have in the world. So you do have specialist factories. And so for me to have signed up with 6 specialist factories means that there's always an open door for anyone. So irrespective, if you're black or white or, yes, I'm in a niche industry. I'm perhaps the only black person in Vietnam who runs a business like this, which I'm really, really proud of, to be honest. And it would have been impossible to do that in China, for example. So this is the difference. The Vietnamese are very open. And I think that there's also, if we reverse it with the current zero duty, I don't know how long it's going to last with the US goods coming into Vietnam. I see an opportunity there as well to reverse the course. So instead of actually shipping from Vietnam to the US, why don't we do the opposite?
Yeah, that's a powerful point. And I was thinking about the same thing too. And we'll probably come back to that, but I'm going to drop the poll now because I know we're sort of midway through the power hour. So I'm going to launch a poll and I'm going to ask, or guest here, if you can just take the poll, give us a sense as to your view on doing business in that area. I see someone in the chat, which I'm sure we'll be able to connect her with about finding a manufacturer and a supplier to be able to do things like shoes in Vietnam. Um, the I want to go back to partnership again. So it sounds pretty simple to be able to do business there, to be able to identify a partner there. Um, what are the risks? I want to talk a little bit about that. What are the risks and how have you been able to mitigate or manage those risks in terms of doing business in Southeast Asia? Maybe Dr. Jackie, we can start with you.
So risks. So two things. One, the way to start, having an inroad certainly is conversations like this with the GOC. But that also leads to part of the answer as well, which is join chambers of commerce. There's an American Chamber of Vietnam. There's AmCham China. There, in these different countries where you may have an interest, if you just want to explore, join, have a membership at the Chamber of Commerce. That gives you immediate access to the business community, people who are having conversations that you want to have. And for the small price of membership, you gain complete access to all kinds of important people and conversations, and you can start building relationships, just like ABC and GOC. So there are these chambers all over the world that way. And it's relationship building. And through these kinds of networks, you meet people and you have conversations, and you can take the conversations off the formal platforms and now communicate through WhatsApp or, a phone call because you have specific questions you want to answer. You need to build relationships and build trust. It needs to be clear that there is mutuality, that you are not just coming in to grab a hold of what they offer and take it for yourself and enrich yourself. There has to be some level of mutuality, because otherwise it honestly looks like a colonizing effort with a brown face, and we don't want to do that. Some of you might. I wouldn't suggest that because that erodes trust, right? The drawbacks will be cultural barriers and language barriers, of course. You cannot possibly learn all the languages in all the countries of the world where you may want to do business. So this is back to points 1 and 2. Build relationships, join join professional organizations where you can have connections with people who know the language and know the culture and who can bring you up to speed. So my company operates on 6 continents. Can't possibly speak all of those languages, but I have point people in each one of these areas where I can call on people to, connect me internally and locally on the ground so that I can have real insights. So the drawbacks would be those things. There's also great suspicion. So just today, I got, it's morning in Vietnam, evening in Vietnam now, but just today I got in a really concerning message about scams that are happening, right? And so people are afraid of foreigners coming in and scamming them. That is based on not having relationships and having built trust. So that's back to points 1 and 2 again. So I think people can mitigate a lot of the barriers simply by having relationships and building trust with the people you want to do business with.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Doc. Soni?
Yeah, well, in every business or in every country, there's a risk. Even in the US, there are risks. And how do you minimize your exposure to risks? And that means that you need to have proper contracts in place, which is the first thing that you think about. Yes, the legal system in Vietnam is not the cleanest, so I must say that, because then there are delays and there are lots of other factors that we will talk about at a different time. But you can prevent all of this if you like Dr. Jackie said, if you have the right people. Now the question is, how do you find the right people? And it's through contacts and people that people that you've worked with, or people that connect you from. So it's ultimately based on the kind of contacts that you have and meeting bona fide business partners. So this is something that's essential. You need to do a lot of research as well, a lot of research, and finding out how are they registered, are they bona fide, are they correct, are they operating a proper business. These are things that one would need to look at to basically minimize. There's always risks. So yeah.
And how would you even find that out too, Sonny? Are there resources? The native language in Vietnam is Vietnamese. I
Yeah.
imagine there are a lot of English speakers there too. But where would you find those things to even begin with? How would I know where to go to look for? Are there portals that are available that you can recommend that we can start with? What's the
Yeah.
starting point?
So starting point would be, for me, having a dual citizenship, I'm British and I'm German as well. First port of call would be your embassy. So let's say you don't know anyone, you just come here. You'd first meet your commercial or trade attaché. So they have a list of advisors, chambers, lawyers, officers that have been tried and proven. So I started like that. I started from there. So you go to your embassy. It depends on how cooperative your embassy is. But I must say my embassies have been very, very helpful. So you would go to them and they would advise you and give you a list of solicitors, of lawyers, of officers, chambers that you could talk to. So that would be the starting point. And that's how you get to know what's good and what's bad.
Yeah. And Dr. Jackie, you talk about that cultural piece, and I think that cultural intelligence piece is so crucial, and it is obviously a drawback to why you probably don't have a lot of us doing business in these different jurisdictions. But beyond the culture, talk a little bit about our people in our community. Why do you think we have been or we're probably so hesitant to really sort of take those leaps and do business, unlike other communities. But just wanted to hear your perspective, maybe even from the education standpoint. What is the thing? Is it just culture? Is it something else? I know it's culture. I know it's capital. I know about these pieces, but what's your view on why do you think this is sort of a stumbling block for us?
So I think stumbling block because geographically, at least from the United States, Asia is half a world away. It's on the other side of the world. And it's just easier and much less expensive to start exploring opportunities in Latin America, in Europe, in Canada, right? Mexico. It's just, it makes more sense and it's a much more practical reason. Then you have the culture and the language barriers, right? So there are all these barriers to Asia, and they're real barriers. Geographic barriers are real and it's costly. The trick is, though, once you get to Asia, after the airline ticket, once you get to Asia, everything is a fraction of the cost as it is in the United States. So you make up lots of money very quickly once you are on the ground in Asia. But I think the inroads needs to be embassies, like Soni was saying, embassies and Chamber of Commerce. That gives you cross-check those lists. So the lists that the embassies will give you about credible businesses or services that are available, cross-check that with the Chamber of Commerce in the country. And you will have a refined list and you'll have contacts. You can actually reach out to these people and get in touch with people who are able to communicate on a professional level in English, but many of them also speak the local languages. So I think there's just very real barriers, but I think they are also easy to overcome for those who are so inclined.
Yeah, and I'm curious to both of you, if you were to start this over, so you just got a magic wand, we erased all of this, and we are starting from a blank sheet of paper, would you choose Southeast Asia? Would you choose Vietnam to do it all over again? And is this where you're going to start with the chamber, with the trade attaché? And I get that piece. What else are we missing? What else are you not telling us in terms of where would you do this if you were to do this all over again from ground zero? And we're going to take some questions shortly, so raise your hand if you have a question. I see hands already raised, but we'll get to those in a minute. But I want to ask both of you this question.
A good one. Soni, do you have an
Yes, it
answer?
is. I do. I think it's a resounding yes. I would do it again.
I would definitely do it again. What don't you know what? I think, oh, this is an interesting thing. So when I first came to Asia, my first entry point was either China or Japan. I forget which one, right? But they are very advanced, developed economies that in many ways are very similar to the US and what I'm used to in New York or DC, certainly on the West Coast, right? Southeast Asia honestly reminded me, you can see immediately that it is not as advanced. I went into Asia through big cities, Beijing, Shanghai, Tokyo, right? When I came into Southeast Asia for the first time, it was to Thailand. And what I liked, and it was in the countryside, reminded me of my family home in Puerto Rico. So it felt very familiar to me. So I think that familiarity always warmed my heart to being in Asia and seeing people, who looked like me, who had brown and dark brown skin and all these, heavy vegetation and tropical environment. It just felt very familiar to me. So I'd absolutely do it again. And I think Vietnam would also be my first entry point for actual business. When I first went to Southeast Asia, it was for vacation, which is a very different experience. But for business, I think it would also be in Vietnam because it is a clear leader in Southeast Asia. And it is the right place to initiate business opportunities.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. I love it. And folks, we're 64% complete in the poll, so we still have some of you who haven't given us your feedback. We would love to hear your thoughts. So we're gonna take some questions now and hear from you. If you have a question, raise your hand. You can put it in the chat. I see two questions in here, guys, and I want to ask. So there was one question from Teresa that she had asked about local business open to collaborating with Americans, and I think you may have answered that. Was there anything else that you wanted to respond to around that specific question?
Well, not really. I think it's more of Vietnamese are very eager to to export the goods because low production costs, and it's in the local currency, which is the VND. It's 26,000 to $1. And if they can export goods, so if there's a partner in the US who they can ship goods to and have a good collaboration, a lot of Vietnamese are open to that type of business. Yes, I see that. My business is basically that, and a lot of Vietnamese have raised their profile in terms of living standards just by exporting.
Oh, awesome, fantastic. Hank Blaze, you're up, sir. Good morning. Unmute and ask your question. It's Henry. It's actually Henry Caslin. Hank Blaze sounded like an actor, but I was like, man, we have real celebrities in the house. But Henry is a
Hey,
celebrity himself. Henry, go ahead.
I'm only a celebrity when I'm around you, Ricardo. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And I just chimed in, and it sounded like you guys kind of touched on. I don't know what the question was about local, but I have to share this. So my daughter, her birthday was yesterday. She turned 12, and both of my daughters, the other one is 13. They are really into Asian culture, and I know this is about Vietnam, but even living here in Gwinnett, where we have our international corridor of what is called Beaufort Highway, and then Pleasant Hill, a lot of Asian, Korean, Vietnamese businesses, and so my question sound like you just mentioned. It was kind of touched on what can we do locally, because my first thought is, just like with our other partners in other countries, and especially Africa, I think, there's a natural pathway to doing business with individuals in Africa. But, I noticed when people go to other countries, I got friends that have settled in Japan and other places. First, they get integrated in the culture. So for some of us in the States that may take a while to get over to Vietnam or whatever, and I think you just mentioned something about the chambers. What do we need to do? Because it sounds like we need to get to understand the culture first. And since, we have the privilege of living in Atlanta, where we got a great cultural corridor area, should we just kind of start there, getting to know certain businesses here, or getting to know their business associations and chambers, just to get us acclimated to the culture? I mean, sounds like common sense, but is that the way people really need to start if you have that kind of cultural area in your city? And that's my question.
So I think that's a great question. So as a longtime faculty member, this is actually the kind of thing I do in the classroom, right? And recommend for students. So certainly you can start at the business level, but with 12-year-old kids, they should be listening to Vietnamese cartoons. They should listen to Vietnamese music, particularly slow music. So in Spanish, we have boleros, right? You want to listen to music that is slow enough, or country music and love songs in the US, R&B. Slow enough lyrics so you can hear the words and the accents, and they will sooner than later start picking up those words and singing back the songs. But cartoons are wonderful, children's books for every level. So even if you are an adult and you want to learn, let's say Vietnamese culture in this case, but any culture, go to children's books. The words are simple and you can build a vocabulary very quickly. K-dramas, it's not Southeast Asia, but it's Korea.
And
Watch
my
K-drama.
girls are all into the K-drama. They're
That's
all
right.
into the K-pop.
That's
and I think
right.
for me, I'm just wondering, would that be a way for me to figure out, okay, what opportunity do I want to go after? Well, that's my thought.
You know the opportunities that you're interested in. When you know the culture, when you start whetting your appetite with the culture, you will start seeing things through a cultural lens that is more nuanced than if you didn't know anything at all. So you'll start reconsidering what you have in mind based on what you're learning and absorbing about the culture and the language, and things will reveal themselves to you that today may not. So it's a great entryway. And then look at the chambers of commerce. So AmCham Vietnam, there are committees, just like ABC, there are committees, just like GOC, that you can join that will give you insight to what's happening in the business community. You can sign up for newsletters, just like ABC, that will tell you what's prominent, what's important, and you can read and start figuring out what makes sense to you. But your kids are on the right track with follow the children. They will show you what you need to do.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you.
That's great. I love it. And it's interesting that you say that, but I want to hear Authorize, your hand is up. Please go ahead with your question. I see we've got another question in the chat we want to take as well before we're out. Authorize?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you so much, Carlos, for letting me ask this question, and thank you guys for coming on the live. This has been a great and insightful conversation, especially as someone who is a e-commerce store and have been shipping things from China to my customers, and I've been looking for a supplier and a manufacturer. I put that in the chat, so I wanted to put that out there. So I'm hoping that this conversation, can go past this particular live, and we can actually meet and talk about that. But I'm glad the other person that asked a question asked about children, because that's my question. I am a single mom who's interested in going to Asia and going to some of the other countries. But I'm concerned about my 7-year-old. Like, how do we integrate them? Like, I'm asking the same questions that he's asking, particularly if I decide to move there, because I'm interested in actually leaving the US. And when I hear people say that they are coming to the United States for education, that makes me want to stay here so that my daughter can stay educated in the United States before I think about leaving. But would you recommend that, or would you recommend actually starting a business and educating your children still in these other places? And how would I do that?
So U.S. higher education, I will argue, is the very best in the world. We have more universities that will handle more types of learners than any place else in the world. So other countries have excellent universities. We have more of them. So we can take any learner at any place on the spectrum and educate that learner, usually through the doctoral level. So no other country in the world can do that. That is higher education. K through 12 education is a different ballgame. So I think you have a lot of flexibility with K through 12 education. There are many international schools all over. All these countries have international schools where your child would be able to learn, local culture and language and make friends from around the world in a single K through 12 school if it's an international school. You can also put your kid in local schools. I know some people who have their foreign children in local schools, whether in China or Vietnam or other countries. And you're going to get the learning. Your child will be competent and learn things, and will actually be learning more because they'll be learning about a new culture in a new place with a new language. And kids pick up the language and the culture so much faster than adults. So, your kid would have your head spinning at how much they came home with knowing. But I say the same thing. The Chamber of Commerce, again, is a point of contact, also the embassy. But look at the education committee. So I belong to the education committee of AmCham China, for example, and you can find all kinds of schools there. You can find all kinds of resources for students. Yeah, use your resources first and come visit. So you should definitely come visit. And if you find international schools, so like in Vietnam, for example, you would go to Hanoi, or you would come to Ho Chi Minh City, or one of the larger cities around there. If you wanted to visit an international school with your child, they would welcome that. So you can go and do that and meet teachers and be in classrooms and meet with the head of school and admissions team. They will curate an entire day for you. But you can come and take a look that way and use your vacation to explore educational opportunities.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for that information. Because, ultimately, I think a lot of us try to, stay in the area where we're, you know, where we're having business and family and you know, so it's not just, you know, we're not a monolith. I mean, in the sense that we only care about business. You know, we got to care about, you know, the impact and the legacies that we're trying to build for a lot of us. So thank you for that.
Awesome, awesome, fantastic. Thank you. And we're gonna end the poll. I see we've got 81%. That's a good show rate. So thank you. We'll give you a couple seconds to just do it if you haven't done it. But we've got one last question because the hour is coming up on us, and I want to get your final reaction, your final advice. You guys are, good business people, and I want to get your advice before we hop. Teresa was asking, what are the obvious gaps? That is, in terms of overabundance, is there overabundance of goods in Southeast Asia or in Vietnam not being exported? Goods that there is a shortage of, for example, in the region that the U.S. might be able to source. Sonny, I don't know if you have a thought on that.
Well, looking at my industry, no, there are no excesses. Because then orders are placed to certain quantities, certain numbers, and they're manufactured based on the volume. The only time there is a glut is perhaps when there are bad quality shoes and the brand rejects them, and those become the excess here. But then, talking about food, there's a big to digress a bit from footwear. Vietnam has produced or won the best rice of the best rice in the world for 3 years in a row. And I've actually tried it. I must say, yes, it's very fragrant. It's amazing. And I think yes. So there is an excess of that. So at the moment, they're getting very stiff competition from Thailand, from Laos, from Cambodia. And there is a rice glut in Vietnam at the moment. Prices have tumbled. And the export, again, India as well, is pushing really hard. So yes, in this particular instance, for this particular product, there is a glut.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It made there's so many questions, but we're out of time, and we've got to come back and probably do a part two. Your feedback here in terms of the poll as we wrap this up, and your advice, your reaction to the poll. I see a lot of folks love the idea of going into Southeast Asia, and people are interested in going on a delegation as well, and that's something that we will certainly be talking about in the near future. And so your final piece of advice, Dr. Jackie, Soni, to the folks who are here, we have people who are interested in going global. They want to do things internationally. We have people who have already started, they want to expand. We have people who are a little timid, they're a little bit concerned about where do they go from here. They want to check things first and maybe come visit. Your final piece of advice as we wrap up to all these type of folks that are on the call today. Maybe we'll start with you, Sunny, and then we'll end with Dr. Jackie. Is he froze? Is he there? I think he probably felt like we lost him there. But Dr. Jackie, why don't you go ahead and until he comes back?
I would say final piece of advice is to bridge the gap. And one way you do that is to go ahead and get your Vietnam visa, because that will encourage you and push you towards coming to visit the country. So go ahead and start the process of getting a visa to visit Vietnam as a tourist and get that out of the way. And then you'll sit there and you'll say, well, I only have 3 months for this visa to be valid, or 1 month for this visa to be valid. Can I do it? But push yourself to get a Vietnamese visa and then let everything flow from that. And contact me if you have any questions or want to be involved.
Fantastic, fantastic. Sonny, your final bit of advice for us?
Well, I would fully agree with Dr. Jackie. And one thing we didn't touch on was the food. There's great food here. And I think, members perhaps could start exploring eating Vietnamese food for a start. And I think that's one huge attraction, apart from all the tourist sites and everything you can do here. But the food here is great. So
Awesome.
get on that plane and we're here. So reach out.
Awesome, awesome. Listen, I'm super curious of how you say the how you say the hour has come, but the power continue in your language. In is it Mandarin or Vietnamese? Like I'm so curious about you saying that for us that we kind of wrap the show up. I don't know if you can if
Soni,
you
go
on the
take it
spot
away.
with that. The hour has come, but the power continues. How do you say that in
My
Vietnamese?
Vietnamese is not that good. It's not I could say it in Italian or in German, but
Oh.
not in Vietnamese. Maybe in Mandarin, yes. But my Vietnamese is still in its infancy at the moment.
Well, we'll certainly be following up with you on that. But guys, this is what we do at the GOC. We give you a platform, we give you access, you lean in, and this is how you get access to some of these people, some of these conversation. It's about access advisory. It's about just really getting the choices to you that you need. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Sonny and Jackie. Thank you for this incredible valuable information that you shared about Southeast Asia. This is just the beginning. This is just whetting our appetite. And I think some people may have already started getting their visa because they want to come through and visit. Now that we know that we've got you guys out there, you will certainly be a part of our speed dial to reach out to. So thank you everyone for coming. Have a great rest of your day. And we definitely look forward to seeing you next week. Take the survey in the chat. Next week, we're going to be talking a lot about sort of capital. How do you access funding? Because that's also a big challenge in our community. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you so much. Jackie, Sonny, thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Ricardo, did Sunny leave his information in the chat?
Yes, we'll get that access for you. I think he might have, but we'll be able to get that for you, authorities.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.